Hello everyone, welcome to another MRCP PACES video. Today is a very special video. We are talking about my actual exam day, all the reality. And this is going to be a two-part video series. This is the first part. We will be going through the second part later this week. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Vishal Kumar. I set up the YouTube channel Keen Medic and also the website keenmedic.com where you can find my PACES course and my book. So let's get started. So in this video, we're going to be covering in chronological order all of this. What I experienced on arrival at the venue of the exam, the brief that I was given, the wait before the exam, and also the overall setting of the exam. Okay, so this is of course a video that you will benefit from if you have never done the exam, or if you have done the exam but you have had perhaps a different experience and you want to see what someone else's experience is like. Okay, all right. So on arrival, I arrived quite early actually. I arrived about 20-25 minutes early, so early because I didn't know the hospital, so I needed the time to navigate myself around the hospital corridors and get to the outpatient department. It was actually a cardiology outpatient department that it was set in, and of course I completely was alien to the hospital, so it took me a while, but I got there. And it was a Sunday, so it was more or less completely deserted, and there weren't many people around. But as you can imagine, there are still on-call doctors, porters, nurses in the corridors who can direct you, and also there were signs on the corridors for MRCP PACES itself. So there was very clearly laid out signs in the corridors directing the candidates towards the outpatient department. So that helped. When I arrived at the outpatient department, there were of course 4 other candidates because there are 5 stations. So in my circuit, there were 4 other candidates and who all eventually arrived. We were all, of course, a bundle of nerves. Okay, we were all anxious, but some of us are more anxious than others, some of us are more nervous than the others. Okay, now in this sort of situation, what I like to do is I kind of like to have my own space, and I will be telling you what I did in a minute. So there was a water fountain, very helpful because you do get thirsty during the wait, and it is very helpful to just get some water before you go into the exam. There was also a toilet, of course, so that's another important thing. I know that these are little things that you might just take for granted, but actually for the overall purposes of the exam, it is so important. Like these 2 basic things are absolutely vital for your comfort, because if you're not comfortable, then you won't be able to focus during the exam. And the register was there. You just signed in to the register with the person at the desk, and they took your name, and then they went ahead and took photos of you to make sure you are the same person that registered. Okay, so you had to bring ID, like a passport, driving license, something like that, and also the confirmation of your examination letter, and they took a photo of you. And then what happened is, this is what I did. We had some time before we went up to the exam corridor. So I took my own space. I didn't talk to anyone because, as I said, there were other candidates, and we were all at various levels of nerves. So these are the few things that I did. I sat down facing the window, and it was quite a pleasant day. It was a summer day, and the sun was out. It was beautiful. I just ran through the templates in my head. Okay, so this was for all the examinations, the history, communication, station 5. Everything. I just sat down, looked through the window, relaxed with some breathing exercises, and just chilled essentially. And I just enjoyed the scenery. That's literally all I did. I did not speak to anyone, because what I find is that if I interact with anybody before such an important thing, then it is easy to take on the nerves of the other person when actually you're not that nervous yourself. So it can have a negative impact, right? So I don't interact with anybody. I do my own thing, have my own space, and run through things on my own. That's what I do. So that's what I did, and hopefully you'll find that doing something like this actually helps you as well, okay? So this is the brief that we got after we registered. So the PACES lead was a consultant at the hospital, and he gave us a very nice but short brief. He was extremely welcoming and warm. He explained the overall layout of the exam. He explained how each of us would be starting at different stations, gave us a number, and then he told us that, you know, it is going to be a corridor. He explained the overall layout of the corridor, and then he wished us well. He wished us good luck. And this was, of course, overall a very calming effect, because you know, when somebody senior like that wishes you well just before the exam, it just helps, I think, just to calm you a little bit more. And not that I was particularly nervous, but even for people who are not very nervous, it still helps, I find, anyway. The reason why I'm telling you all of this is because the exam has a very notorious reputation, right? This is really, in reality, not necessarily the case, because as you can see, the experience that I had was actually very warm and very welcoming. So it doesn't have to be negative and pressured, if that makes sense. So just before we started the exam, the carousel, we had to wait just outside the corridor. So we were led up the stairs from where we were waiting, the waiting room, up the stairs towards the corridor where there were double doors. And we had to leave our phones, valuables, and our bags all outside the double doors with the corridor, okay? And there were some final checks done with our ID. People made sure, you know, we didn't need any more water, toilets, everything like that, okay? Just stuff like that. And he made sure that we were happy with our stations, where we were starting, things like that. And then we moved on to the exam. Now, in terms of the exam setting, this is what it was actually like, okay? So as I said, it was an outpatient clinic. So there were rooms on either side of the short corridor, okay? So it was actually a very compact environment, because it wasn't a long corridor that you had to navigate, walk up and down, and spend precious seconds that you could be using towards preparing for the station. So it was quite a good setting in that sense. And the short corridor had rooms next to each other, and also on either side of the corridor, on opposite sides, okay? So there was a very short distance to navigate, and that also means that when you were in stations like station 1 and station 5, where you have two cases back to back, you didn't have to go a long distance before, you know, you went to the next patient, essentially. And there were chairs outside the stations, outside the doors, with the crib sheets, with the scenarios, so you could take the time to then go for it and write down and prepare for the station. And there was also, very helpfully, again, a water fountain outside, so that if you needed water, which often I personally did, because you have to do a lot of talking, right? And you get thirsty, you're walking around. So that was very helpful. And there were helpers in the exam. So these were non-clinical helpers. So they help with things like timekeeping, showing the candidates to the right station, and making sure that there was enough paper, stuff like that. If there was any concern, then you could raise your concerns with the helpers, and they helped you, essentially. Okay, so you obviously get 5 minutes with the stations before you enter the station, okay? And I found that most of the time this was just enough time. In terms of what I exactly mean by that, I will be covering that more in detail in part 2 of this series, so make sure you check that out. It's going to be coming in the next few days, okay? So it was just enough time, basically. So part 2 is going to be coming soon, guys. Don't miss it. You will benefit a lot from it. So I will see you in that video. But for now, if you want to learn more about PACES and how you can really maximize on your strategies, do check out my book, which is available on Amazon. It will be linked below. You can find it on Kindle and on paperback forms. And of course my course, which will also be linked below. Okay, I will see you in the next video in part 2.